Thank you, Acting Speaker. $194 billion of debt under this state Labor government. This is not just a number. Let's look at a $1 coin. If you stacked up $1 coins, this amount of debt would go to the moon and back, not just once, but twice. It would mean if you were paying $1 million of interest every single day, it would take 530 years to pay back this debt. This is a debt that is worth $38,000 for every single adult Victorian. And even an adult Victorian earning an average salary, a $38,000 debt is a big amount. So this is a big amount, and it goes beyond that. It means $29 million of taxpayer-funded interest payments every single day. That is $1.2 million of taxpayer-funded, and I make that point, it's not the government, it's taxpayer-funded interest payments every single hour. Over this 10-minute speech of mine, that will be $200,000 of taxpayer-funded interest. This economic mismanagement is having real-life consequences. It's already meant many cuts to services and infrastructure, and it means we can't spend what we need to spend on infrastructure and services into the future. It's also meant that this Labor government has increased or introduced 61 new taxes. That's 61 new or increased taxes that impact every single Victorian. And that is driving out new investment in small businesses, new investment in housing, rentals and more. While this government at the same time, while racking up this debt, continues to waste Victorian funding, Victorian taxpayer-funded funding that goes towards major projects and more. They've blown out so many major projects, it's not funny. And while Labor has looked at a short-term budgetary gain to try and meet their debt, that has meant long-term pain for Victorians and long-term pain for the economy. Instead, we need an approach that cuts waste, that cuts taxes, that cuts red tape, so we can actually grow our economy, so we can grow investment and we can grow the revenue pie, which means that we can help to pay down this debt, we can have less interest payments for Victorians, and we can spend more on essential infrastructure and services. Now, I want to go into actually what further this debt means for the everyday Victorian. Let's look at roads. It means roads are falling apart, and with roads falling apart, more potholes, we have more accidents as well, and more serious accidents. On crime, we see reception hours reduced for police stations across Victoria, included in my electorate of Mornington. We see a 1,100 police shortage. This is all impacting Victoria Police's ability to then respond to crime and to prevent crime. That includes in the member for Brighton's seat, in the member for Paran's seat, in my seat, in Mornington, in the seat of Warrandyte, and so many other seats, including seats for those opposite who are part of the Labor government. We've also seen cuts to education. This is something that the Labor Party parrots on about. They supposedly look after the education space, but we've seen $2.4 billion cut from public schools. And that $29 million of interest payments in just a few years' time could mean a school redevelopment every single day. Places like Mount Eliza Secondary College in my electorate, which is now 50 years old, it hasn't had an upgrade in 50 years, that is in desperate need of an infrastructure upgrade. And that could be done in one day worth of these interest payments. And we have to look at, as well, at hard-working parents, including in my electorate and across Victoria, who are paying more on schools and on non-government schools as well, including the Mornington Peninsula, where we are paying metropolitan payroll tax, much more than Geelong and elsewhere that are considered regional. That's despite the fact that we have 82% of the Mornington Peninsula not having access to public transport. So much for metropolitan. Now, small businesses are also already closing due to increased taxes, and that will only continue, which is really not what this government needs. This government needs more small businesses and more investment so they can actually grow the economy and grow their revenue pie over the long term. We see the major impact for individual households as well, as Mentioned before, we have a 22% increase in power bills. We have grocery bills going up. Rents are going up, particularly as the increased land taxes are passed through. Not to mention that the fact that a number of landlords have been selling up, which means less rental stock in the market, which again, with less supply, that means more rents for those who are trying to get into the rental market to start with. With the payroll tax, land tax, stamp duty, all these other costs, they are having a major impact on Victorians' ability to live, survive, invest and more. Let's look at public housing as well and the homelessness crisis across Victoria. We have more than 60,000 people in Victoria on the public housing waiting list. The Mornington Peninsula is now the second highest in metropolitan Melbourne for homelessness and the fourth highest in the whole state. If, say, we could spend this $29 million of taxpayer-funded interest better, let's say we could actually build about 30 homes a day towards this much-needed public housing. That could actually, over, say, a year, house many of these people on the 60,000 plus wait list. We also have, as we saw recently, thousands of people out the front steps of this Parliament House protesting against increased taxes with the Labor government's proposed new emergency services tax, which, yes, under much pressure they've delayed for a year, but this needs to be scrapped altogether, and this is what the Coalition have committed to. But this would mean much increased costs for farmers, including CFA volunteers, as well as landowners across Victoria, which are then passed through to renters and so many others. In the health space, we have less funds, given our debt crisis, to spend on hospitals. We have less funding to spend on ambulances. And the ambulance ramping issue has been going up and up and up. We have not enough investment in our emergency departments, which is having a real-life impact with people's health, particularly in an emergency. If they're not getting an ambulance in time or not getting to the hospital time, we see people with more serious injuries. We see people sadly passing away as well. This is also not helped by the GP tax, which, when passed through to the patient, sees increased fees for patients who are just trying to see their doctors as well. We also have more taxes for those who just want to have a holiday with their family, no matter where they want to travel to. This is another tax that we have committed to scrapping if we are to form government. And yet, we have seen a situation in this budget where Labor's not only going to $194 billion of debt, they have things like the suburban rail loop on the books, Mark Stiller's TBC. What was that? TBC. Still TBC. They can't even service the current debt. How are they going to service the debt if you add another $200 billion on top of that? Instead of looking at these white elephant projects, you have places like the Mornington Peninsula, as I mentioned, which has 82% of the Mornington Peninsula has no access to public transport. There is no train at all to places like Mornington. There is no train at all to places like Mildura. Perhaps we should look into investing a very small subset of the amount going to the suburban rail loop to actually deliver passenger rail to start with in places like Mornington and Mildura, instead of spending more and more of taxpayer funding when we cannot do so, we cannot afford to do so. So going more into this situation that we're facing, we are falling behind every single other state on nearly every single metric. And this is not just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of public importance. This place must condemn the Allen Labor government for driving Victoria into economic decline, debt dependency, and deepening the cost of living crisis. We have a situation where we are also in a position now where the government is taxing more than ever. A projected $42 billion in annual state tax by 2026, and we are still running cash deficits year after year. Victoria's GDP is now 11.5% below the national average, down from a position of strength in the early 2000s, and household disposable income is now the second lowest in the country. So I support this MPI message brought by the opposition, and I thank the member for Brighton. This Labor government need to